question, we'll start with Mr. Suzanne. How will we educate our children to compete globally?
Well, we first create trade agreements that are fair to American workers and state and the nation. But as far as education is concerned, and global education, you start at home. Education has to be our priority. I've mentioned many times in this country, we have our priorities mixed up. And by that I mean simply priorities and budgets are really very similar. You provide a budget and you decide what you want to do with the money. And if education isn't a priority, what you end up, say for in a state or a country, you end up with underfunding education. In this state, it happens to be K-1 to 12. We're following behind the state of Minnesota, we're following behind the state of Missouri and elsewhere because we don't fund education. So not only do we have to create trade agreements that favor all of American workers and the educational activities that relate to that, but the bottom line from my perspective is we have to provide our students with the ability to finance their college education without going into debt. Those are issues that are very important to my campaign and very much important to the people that suffer under the burden of debt in our society. So we have to also provide the types of education that will allow them to compete on a global scale, sciences, engineering, etc.
Let me say that I was a poor farm boy when I went to law school. I borrowed money at 17%. I've been out 28 years and I still owe my student loans. So student loan reform is where it starts. Well, let me just step back from that and talk about right now high school graduates who have very high unemployment rates, and we have retired baby boomers who have technical skills we're having a hard time replacing. One of the things I've called for in the Senate campaign is a new WPA, where we train young people in the technical skills and we have them rebuild our historic landmarks, our national parks. At the K-12 level, I believe in the Common Core. I support the Common Core except for high-stakes testing. I do think we need to set uniform national standards. On the college level, I support the Bernie Sanders plan for free public tuition. I would extend that for the same amount of money for people that go to private colleges. I would also extend it to include technical schools and trade schools. The last part of that is I would reform our student loan program. I believe that student loans should be refinanced, allowed to be refinanced at the lowest rate. If that isn't sufficient, I'm in favor of a program that's been passed around Congress called 10 in 10, where when you graduate, you pay 10% of your disposable income for 10 years, then you're done. Clearly, in this competitive international economy, we have to have people that are educated to their full ability to compete in the global economy. Thank you.
First, let me start by saying in the last question, I forgot to utilize the words full comprehensive reform, and I want Rick Smith to fully hear that so I don't see a tweet later saying I didn't say that. Second, I am the only licensed educator up here that has actually taught in the Des Moines public school system. I've looked at kids' faces over 6 or 7 years on and off as a teacher in the Des Moines public school system. I believe that we need to fully fund education. I believe we need to add more resources in the classroom. Our classrooms are overcrowded, our teachers aren't paid enough, and the kids nowadays are dealing with issues that many of you as adults didn't deal with when you were children. In fact, 2 weeks ago, on a Friday, I happened to be at the request of Heather Anderson Morrow on the Des Moines Public School Board. I attended her class, second grade class of eight-year-old students in Waukee school system. The young man, a Caucasian child, raises his hand and he says, "Can you give me money?" And I looked at him and I had no idea what he meant. He said, "Well, can you give me money? My mommy needs money. My mommy has no job and she needs money." This is an 8-year-old boy in second grade and his mother lives in Fort Dodge. That's a burden that our 8-year-old children, our second graders should not have. So when we talk about poverty, when we talk about wages, when we talk about the economic system, what ends up happening is that it starts to cascade down and becomes a bearing of a weight, and that goes from mom and dad, and where does it end up? It ends up on the shoulders of the children. I know this firsthand from being in the classroom. And I still have time. I'm also a high school dropout that earned the GED that went on to law school, so education is critically important.
When the greatest generation came home from war, they invested in our country because all of them had personally invested in the future of our country. They invested in our roads and our bridges and our schools, and they invested in the big things like putting a man on the moon. And that's what created this America. That's what helped make America exceptional. And the way that we continue to compete in the new global economy as we move forward is to invest at home first. It's investing in those things. It's investing in infrastructure. It's ensuring that we invest in education and that we kill bad trade deals that try to ship jobs overseas. We cut down on currency manipulation that we're seeing. When you look at exactly what America needs to do, it includes strengthening our labor unions. I'm proud to have been endorsed by the American Federation of Labor and over 10 labor unions. We need to compete, but we need to invest at home first. Right now, we have Representative David Young, who is one of only 64 members of Congress to vote against the bipartisan highway bill. Even Steve King voted for the highway bill. We have someone who invested against the Export-Import Bank, which creates thousands of jobs here in Iowa. And even Terry Branstad sent a letter to Congress saying, Iowa supports the Export-Import Bank because it doesn't cost taxpayers anything and creates thousands of jobs. That needs to change. Every opportunity David Young has had an opportunity to vote with the moderates. Instead, he's chosen to vote with the Tea Party. That's the contrast that we need to point out every single day between now and November.
Well, as a parent of 3 children, I understand how important education is. And I'll tell you what, when I started in this business, my kids were little. They're not so little anymore, but I've watched them and their friends and their peers. And man, this is the foundation of our economy. It's the foundation of our democracy. It's the foundation of our future. And for me, if you ask me, what's the centerpiece of your strategy for growing an economy, I'm going to tell you it's investing in education and training and youth employment and research and development and those things that drive our economy forward. At the state level, once again, this is where, by being in office, by winning elections, I've helped get things done. We helped pass the 4-year-old preschool program. That was this major step forward for early childhood education in the state. I helped pass the first STEM initiative. I support arts education to put the STEAM in STEM. Even this year, as bleak as it is with Governor Branstad, thank God we had the Senate Democrats there to get 2% up to at least 2.25%. And we've got to make significant progress on it. At the higher education level, we passed 3 years of tuition freeze. Branstad vetoed the 3rd years. That was a disappointment. But look, at the federal level, we've got to have the federal government engaged in helping states achieve our goals from early childhood all the way to college and job training, Head Start, Title I, special education funding, career and technical education, college costs. We'll have to wait for another question. Thank you.